Hello everybody and welcome to another Unity game development video. I haven't worked on one in a while. One second, let me take my headphones off. I haven't shown one off in a while actually because I've been kind of messing around with things in the game, and honestly I've been a little bit distracted from, the overall goal of getting a working game going. I've just been messing around with things in Unity and Blender. And also, I've been playing a lot of Escape from Tarkov, which is pretty fun. It's a different game than I'm used to, but it's really interesting. But enough with that. With this disclaimer, into the actual thing that I'm working on. I've been messing around with level transitions, and specifically, that's not just switching between scenes in Unity, it's getting the player where I want them to be in the new scene. So imagine like in games like Resident Evil, there's many different areas in the mansion and stuff like that. And not every room just has one door. There's several ways, two, maybe even three ways to get into a single area. And the way the scene switching works in Unity, if you don't have a system set up, is just the global space of the scene. If you have a player that just isn't deleted when that scene switches, they're just going to maintain that global position and fall right onto the map where they were before. So we need some kind of function that's going to displace the player and put them exactly where we want them when they go into a room. So imagine if you're in Resident Evil and you go through a door, obviously you're going to want them to come out the other side of that door. So in this little MS Paint example I have here of what I'm going to do with my system, so let's say this is the player, that's what my player looks like anyway, and this is the first level. If we go through this green door, we want them to end up on the other side. The same with the yellow one. As it is with Unity, imagine that these are to scale. Level 2 is the same scale as level 1. If I were to go through this green door at the very bottom of the room, I would just be transported to the end of the other room. So it's kind of like these two levels are sharing the exact same space. But we want it to reposition the player so that we give the effect that they're coming through a different door. What you could do without this system is place your levels in the grand, global position of the entire Unity space, specifically in a way that when you go through a door, that position that you're at when the scene switches is where the door was. But that's really complicated, and it's not complicated, it's just stupid, because you'll have to be shifting all the scenes around and make sure that each of the doors from each of the specific scenes in Unity are lining up with another door in a different scene, and that's really silly. So what we want to do is take this player and imagine if level 2 was its own little separate thing. If I just split this like this, because we don't want them to be in the same spot. So now they're not aligned. So if I just went through this thing, and as I walked through, it transitioned scenes, I would literally just spawn, I believe, outside and fall. What we want is to go here, activate a function, and then place the character directly on the other side of the door. And if I jump into Unity, I can show you it working. So I have these different gates set up, and they send you to both the same scene, but different positions in different scenes. So if I go through the green gate, I end up outside of the green gate. And if I go back to the yellow gate, I end up in the first level outside of the yellow gate. And having the player switch between those scenes is a little more complicated than I'm leading on, and I'll just gloss over that for a second if I jump in here. When it comes to something like that, if I go down to my player script, I have a thing where it's collecting an instance of the object and making sure that if that instance still exists from the first scene, it's destroying any other ones that are created by it. So the player exists when you first start running the game. And if I leave that area and come back, the player will re-instantiate and there will be two players. So what it's doing is it's checking if the player already exists, and if they do, they're destroying the new player that's being built there. I could create a function that would spawn the player immediately at the beginning of the game, and that function just wouldn't run if we found this thing, but destroying it is just as easy. So if I close up that player manager script, what's happening here is with these gates, I have them as a prefab, and their collision, which is a trigger, is slightly offset in the front of it. So as soon as a character enters this little box, the function is activated and it's sent to the other level. What I have up here is a string called destination, and that's finding the scene in the build settings, and it's transitioning to that scene. So the other level that I was just on is called test level, and we just have the string here, and it'll look for that in the script. Exact destination is an integer, and the reason for that is it's actually I'm just typing in here the index of the gate's receiver. So the yellow gate in the other level has the index in an array of gates at 1. So it's just checking where to send the player model before it switches the scene. The level gate ID is just some information that you might want, like which gate is this on the map. It's actually an offset of the index, so this is probably actually 0, but I can change that in the future. Just a bool deciding if the gate is actually active, and that's important not just for deactivating gates, but for having kind of stipulations or unlockable areas. So maybe you can't enter the city in a game until you've done a few quests or something like that, so the gate won't work and it won't activate until those requirements are met. And just if it's a one-way gate or a two-way gate, so the receiver will also work as a gate if it's set to two-way. And which this is only this next one, set direction sender or receiver, is only what is it called? Not valid, pertinent, whatever. It's only important if this is set to one way. It's just like if you're familiar with Halo 3's Forge, you could place teleporters, and you always have to place if they're two-way or one-way. And if they're one-way, then they can be senders and receivers. And this exit vector is just a game object, just a prefab that I made in Blender. And it's just an arrow, and it is doing, when the gate is receiving the character, it's the location and direction that the character will be facing. In my specific instance with my character, it is not going to set the direction of the character because there's a lot of complicated things going on with parented objects in my camera. I can fix that later, but if it was just a very simple thing where a character was going in there, there wasn't many layers to the character, as you can see right here, then it would just place the character in the direction that the arrow is facing and in the position of the arrow. So, if we look at how it runs, these gates have these colliders, and if we go to the level gate script, when the character hits the collider, it's checking if the if the gate is even active. If the gate is active and either set as a sender and one-way or a two-way, then it will check if it's a player, and if it's a player, it will use a level manager dot set LED exact destination. That's a function I'll show you in this level manager script in a second. And then it is contacting the scene manager, and it is loading the next scene, the destination, that string that is attached to this gate. And that level manager script is right here, and it says, where is it? And it was just get LED, or set LED actually, right? Yes, set LED. And the LED stands for not light emitting diode, it's last exact destination, and that's just the last exact destination that's being grabbed from a level gate. So it's just a simple getting script or a setting script, and it's setting that private variable as the gate ID that is derived from this last gate. So if we go to the level info script, what's happening is that when we go into the next level, the scene is starting. There's an entire new scene, and there's a level info script object that's attached to each scene. And when that starts, it's going to run this function, set player location, with that gate index. And what's happening is, so if the last exact destination is valid, if it's more than -1, because indexes don't usually go negative, then the player transform is being set to the index of that gate within the array, and it's getting the level gate component and finding the transform of that exit vector object. So it's placing you at that location, and it's grabbing the gate index from that player that lands on it. So I think it's a pretty simple and pretty straightforward system. Hopefully I've explained it well enough. I have another example of it working if I just go over here and I move into the next scene. And if I go to this tall building I've created, I have an entrance, and it places me at the top of it. And I can jump off of it. And while it is placing me at the top of that, for my specific requirements for the game, I want it to load a new scene anyway. I mean, load the exact same scene, but a new instance of it, reverting everything. But if you didn't want that to happen, then you'd probably have a separate function that does exactly what that starting function does, but not as a starting function, has some other trigger like entering the trigger area. So my character is just transported to the top of this object. So I think that's all I have to talk about. It's been a while since I made a video. If you like what you saw, or if this was at all helpful, subscribe, like the video, favorite it, throw it in a playlist or something. I don't know what YouTube wants, and or send it around, share it with people who might have the same questions. I'm gonna quickly scroll through the script one more time, just so you can see exactly how it's coded, and maybe get an idea of how you might want to incorporate something in here for what you're doing, or maybe this might apply to a completely different objective you might have. But we got these enums in here that are just, generally they only have these two options right now, so they technically could have been bools. But I think it's a lot neater this way. So I'm just going to quickly scroll through the script so you can see them. Pause it if you need more time. And hopefully my explanation made sense, and thank you for watching. See you in the next video.